Welcome to the Growth Catalyst Show, where we believe that growth could come in many forms: professional, personal, company, sales, you name it. I'm your host, Dan Mahony, founder of Transcendent Sales Solutions and a guide to a world of growth possibilities. I've spent my career empowering companies and their people with strategies that accelerate growth. I'm here to bring you stories of these business leaders and their trusted advisors to gain insights into their journeys and learn how they fuel their own growth. Just maybe their journey could become part of your own growth story. Are you ready? Let's grow. Welcome to the Growth Catalyst Show. I'm so glad to have my guest here today, David Doerrier. Welcome, David.
Well, thank you so much, Dan, for inviting me to be a part of your podcast. I am so excited to not only be with you here this morning, but also to learn a little bit from you and to share some things from myself to your listeners.
Well, I'm really, and the pressure's on based on what you do. And I'm going to tell everybody a little bit about you. David Doerrier is a highly skilled professional speaker, trainer, facilitator, and public speaking coach. His expertise is helping individuals and organizations effectively communicate their message without overwhelming their audience. With 30 years of experience in training and development, industry design, leadership, corporate training, public speaking, and an expert in adult learning theory, David is passionate about empowering people to reach their maximum speaking potential. Known for his engaging style and ability to connect with the audience, David is in high demand speaker in the trainer industries for conferences, corporate events, and educational institutions nationwide. He has a knack for simplifying complex concepts and delivering practical insights that enable his clients to elevate their presentation skills. David, that's a mouthful. How did I do?
You did great. You did good. I gave you an A+.
Well, thank you. You know, I was looking at your background this morning. You have an interesting background, and I want to learn a little bit about your journey. Saw that you started in the Air Force as an air transport specialist, and you spent 28 years serving our country. I want to thank you, first of all, for your service.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
So as a military family, I know the sacrifice that you put in for our country and is really appreciated. But I look at when you start in the Air Force, and as I look through your journey, tell me about, was this something that you always thought was in your destiny when, as a young airman?
Well, that's a great question. I think that the only thing that I really had a passion, I joined the Air Force a year after high school. I had a guaranteed job of air transportation and loading, downloading anything and everything that you can think of that will fit on a military or civilian aircraft. And as far as training, I don't know if that was anywhere in my vision of something that was going to come down the road. However, one thing that I did want to get involved in was radio broadcasting. It was a passion of mine when I was growing up in Long Island, New York, and I tried to get into armed forces, radio and television. And then fortunately, I had an opportunity to get into radio in the early 80s. And this is before I was in training and development. So radio, that's why I came off active duty after 10 years, went into the reserves, was looking for the fame and fortune in radio broadcasting, found some of the fame, but none of the fortune. So thank goodness, eventually the Air Force in 1995, the reserves, offered me an opportunity to move here to Dobbins in Marietta, Georgia, to be an instructor for folks that were coming into our career field. So I think that, yes, radio broadcasting, I was doing some speaking. I was doing a lot of community theater as well at that time. And then one thing led to another, and then ended up in training 30 years ago and found that this is where I was meant to be in training.
I saw that you did radio in Concord, California, and in Guam. So no money or fame and as a shock jock in Guam, correct?
I was working I was in Guam 2 different times working radio. While I was still active duty, I was working part-time radio for an AM station on the weekends. And then once I separated from the Air Force active duty when I was in the States, I was invited to come back. And now I had a full-time job working radio. I was mainly doing the evening shift, was doing 6 to midnight So it wasn't Good Morning Guam. It was Good Evening Guam.
You weren't. It wasn't the graveyard. It wasn't the graveyard Guam either, which is good.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
So I also saw that you've dabbled into acting. So now, where could I have ever seen you on maybe a movie as an extra? Let me. Is
Yeah.
it? Should I guess? I'm sure many have.
Well, I wish I could. There is a movie out there, very obscure movie that I did here in Atlanta years ago, which I can't even remember the name of it at this point. But most of the acting that I did was in community theater stage acting. I started in dinner theater on Guam. I did some in California, and then in Texas. And then when I moved here to Georgia, I was doing quite a bit of community theater around the area.
That's awesome. Well, tell me, how did all that lead to, and I know you had mentioned you were in the Air Force and you had the opportunity to start doing some speaking and coaching. How did this all lead to the journey to kind of walk us through how it got to you where you are today?
Great question. So as I said, 30 years ago, the Air Force invited me to be a trainer. So that's when I first started learning the craft of training, writing training, delivering training on a daily basis. And what I quickly learned is, you'll see my sign behind me, talking and telling ain't training or selling. So I had to quickly learn how to engage an audience. It wasn't just merely getting up in front of an audience and flapping my gums and hoping that it would stick. It's been quite a process to learn that. So I was with the Air Force for 5 years as a trainer. I eventually retired from the Air Force Reserves in 2004, and then moved into civilian organizations in their training departments. And eventually, along with my responsibilities of designing training and delivering soft skills training, software training, a variety of different trainings within the organization, I was eventually tasked with training our trainers to be better trainers and training subject matter experts who were coming in to be trainers, working with other folks within the organization to be better speakers and facilitators. I've been a part of Toastmasters on and off for 30 years. So what I found when I started working with others to help them be better presenters and better facilitators and running meetings more effectively, I found that I really loved this part of my job. And I was seeking opportunities outside of the organization to help others. And I just kind of fell into this coaching business. So today, my full-time business is working with all types of subject matter experts, especially highly technical subject matter experts who have a difficult time. Well, their audience realizes this. Their audience understands that the information that's coming at them is very technical. I don't understand it. I'm totally overwhelmed. Sometimes the speaker doesn't understand that they're vomiting this information on them. But those are my ideal clients. So ones that are highly technical, that need help refining their content so the average listener can understand it.
Yeah, that I was actually had a discussion with somebody the other day how, trying to speak nuclear physicists, explaining a concept to somebody in layman's terms where they don't give you that deer in headlight look is what are they talking about?
Exactly.
So, tell me, as far as public speaking and presentations, it is for many people I know the hardest thing they ever do. I mean, it is they would rather get on an airplane and jump out with a parachute than get in front of a group of people and make a speech or do a presentation. Why is that?
That's a great question, and that's the $10 million question. And it's, first of all, let me say this: that if you are nervous, you're normal. Everybody, including myself, I would imagine. I don't know Tony Robbins from Adam, but I would imagine that even Tony Robbins gets nervous before going out in front of an audience. The trick is learning how to work through that anxiety, that nervousness, or better yet, let me back up and say we need to reframe it. Don't call it nervousness, call it excitement. that I am excited to share this information with my audience. I can't wait to share this knowledge because I know my audience is eager to learn this information. Being nervous, it's normal. Finding how to work through that nervousness, that is part of the foundational skills when it comes to public speaking.
Where does the nervousness typically come from? I've found in some cases, if I'm going up and presenting something that is not mine to present and someone else's, is where I have a problem. And I've seen that in the past for myself.
Well, and what you just described here, you're describing that you're getting up in front of an audience, you're expected to speak about something that you know very little about, correct? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, or it's a subject like, okay, I have to do a presentation and I've taken someone else's presentation, I'm going to go give it. And I found unless I go in there and make that presentation my own in a way, I feel like I'm giving someone else's speech or someone else's training or presentation.
Yeah, that's a great question. Now here's something that I took away when I started in radio broadcasting that I also share with my clients in public speaking, that I feel it's okay to mimic others when you're starting. And eventually, the more you get up, the more you do it, the more you practice, the more experience you have, you're going to start developing your own shtick. And that's exactly what I did. When I first started in radio, I was learning by the seat of my pants, just like when I was in training. I'm learning by the seat of my pants. So I was observing others, and I would steal things from their style. And then eventually I developed my own style along the way. So what you described, I would feel, now, first of all, is your audience going to know that you're stealing I shouldn't say stealing this, that you're giving this presentation, it's someone else's? Would they know it's someone else's, or are you the only one who knows that? And
in a lot of cases, you're right. You're the only one who knows it, but you start getting in your own head. Everybody knows that I'm doing this, and this should be someone else up here doing it, and I didn't create this. Yeah.
Well, number one, your audience is not going to know that. So here is a good example of that. You're focused more on the content than you are on the mechanics of delivering the message. You're focused more on the message. Yes, we need to be focused on the message, but you're concentrating more on that message than really just getting up there and having fun and informing your audience. Because I would think that even though you're using someone else's presentation, they're eager to learn this information, correct?
Correct. Absolutely. I remember it's transformative when you learn some public speaking and get some training. One of my first career jobs, I was put in, when I was working for McKesson, I was put in a 2-day presentation skills class, and I'll never forget his name. I'll never forget those. His name was Jack Solomon. And he taught me something that, look, it's not about all the visuals. This is before PowerPoint and everything. This is not about all the visuals. This is all about the handouts. This is about you. You know this. You have to go and you have to do it a cappella. And I'm not going to let you leave this room until you go and do it. And he taught me that when it's in here, I can put it out there much better. And it was transformative for me in my career.
Exactly. And just one sidebar, I also worked for McKesson in my past.
You did. That's right.
Yeah.
We were, I think you were there a little bit after I left, but and when you talk, and I still to this day remember Jack Solomon. Give me some examples of some folks, some stories. I'd love to hear some success stories where you've helped people and seeing them go from point A to, where they are today. I'm sure you have dozens of them to share.
Let's take a moment for a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of the Growth Catalyst Show was brought to you by Transcendent Sales Solutions. Whether your company is facing uncertainty, declining sales, or resource limitations, Transcendent Sales has the solution. Their team has decades of experience helping businesses find alignment to meet their growth goals and transforming underperforming sales organizations into revenue-producing market leaders. They take a hands-on, results-oriented approach to solving sales challenges. Visit transcendentsales.com to learn more and subscribe to the bi-weekly Growth Catalyst Catalyst newsletter for insightful growth strategies. Transcendent Sales Solutions, empowering businesses to reach new heights. And now back to the show.
Well, yes, but before I get to that, I wanted to reinforce something that you said that you learned from Jack Solomon, and that is that the clearer that you can see it, feel it, smell it, taste it, experience it within yourself. When I mentor new Toastmasters, and one of the things I tell them is, don't worry so much about the content, because what you're working on is more of the mechanics of speaking. Your speeches should be at the beginning things that you know very well. Talk about your new car. Talk about your house. Talk about the dog you just adopted. Whatever it is, the wedding you just had or attended, whatever it happens to be, you need to talk about things that you know well, because the more you know it, the easier it is for you to talk about it. And if you get lost anywhere within that story, it's okay, because you know it so well, you're going to be able to get back to it. And this way, you don't have to worry about the content. You can focus more on the mechanics. So it's certainly reinforcing what you were told earlier. As far as the story, I have a very recent story, a gentleman who found me through LinkedIn, and he was working harder at avoiding speaking than actually getting up and speaking in front of others. He was now faced with a dilemma. He had a speaking engagement coming up that he could not back out of. There were instances in the past where he was on that first step, ready to walk up on that stage, and he backed away. He got an assistant. This guy's a CEO. He was able to get someone else immediately to get up there and speak for him. He mentioned that happened a lot. However, he had a speaking engagement 2 weeks ago that he couldn't do that. He designed a workshop or a day within his organization where they were focusing on all of the different solutions that they provided to their customers. And he had to get up and give the opening speech. Why are we here? What are we doing? Thank you for all of that. And he couldn't get out of it. He was nervous. He felt he was going to die. So I had to do two things. One, we designed a presentation, an opening that was, because he designed this whole thing, he knew what he was going to talk about. So the content wasn't really the issue. What was the issue was his confidence getting up there. One of the things I tell all of my clients, this goes with the nervousness, what I said earlier, being nervous is normal. Number two, your audience wants you to be successful. There's only one person in that room that feels that this whole thing is going to go south. Can you guess who that one person is in that room that feels that the speech is not going to work? Yeah, the speaker. So this event happened in Brazil. So he and I were texting back and forth. This was 10 o'clock last week, Wednesday, when he gave the speech. All through the weekend, well, we met face-to-face over the weekend. Monday, we're texting back and forth. Tuesday, we're texting back and forth. Up till 9:45 on Wednesday, we're texting back and forth. I'm happy to report that he did it. I'm going to see a recording at some point, but he did it. And I'm also happy to report that he did not die. And now he feels so much more confident, so much more believing in his abilities, because that was the goal. Yes, maybe he's going to make a couple of mistakes up there. Maybe there's going to be a couple of ums and ahs, but the overall objective was to get him up there, finish what he had to do successfully, and get off and feel that relief, feel that adrenaline rush that I did it. That was the objective.
And, in those presentations, and I'm guessing for him, that first minute was the key. Mm-hmm. That first minute. And, and sometimes you have to disarm yourself. I find that I'm a humorous guy. I like to make light of things that, telling a joke or telling something to give them to laugh always help me in the first 30 seconds, except for the time when you tell something and it's like crickets and it's like hearing a pin drop and you're like, that's hard.
Yeah. And what you described is what I hear a lot from people is that first minute, that first 2 minutes, that is the period of time that people feel the most anxiety. Once they get through that 1 or 2 minutes, then they feel that they're a lot more comfortable. So there are ways to work through that initial anxiety, how to prepare yourself before you get up on that stage, how to work through those first couple of minutes. There's certainly ways. But let me share this with you, that I view a public speaker, and let's define a public speaker. Anybody that's getting up in front of any size audience, to me, is a speaker. Whether you're mentoring one person, maybe you're training a group of people, you're in front of a client for a sales call, for a prospect, if you're talking at a networking event, if you're standing up and giving your 1 minute presentation, every single one of those examples, I feel, fall into that public speaking category.
It's very broad.
So the way that I look at this speaker is that we are not different from an athlete, a musician, a dancer, and a singer. As a singer, you learn how to breathe properly, how to project your voice, how to use vocal variety as a singer. Public speaker, we have to do the same thing. As a musician has to learn how to use their instrument. In this case, our body is our instrument, using proper body language, same as a dancer. You know, if you've ever been to a ballet, they don't talk. It's all about using body language to project what it is that they're trying to say to their audience. And in public speaking, we're using our body. 93% of our message comes from our nonverbals. Now, there's a lot that falls into that nonverbal category, and only 7% from the actual words. And then finally, the athlete. Can you think of any? Well, now we've got the Atlanta Braves that are going to be heading to the World Series. Do you think that any of those members of the Atlanta Braves will walk straight from their home, fully dressed, into their car, park the car, and walk directly out onto that field? Probably not. They're going to have to prepare themselves mentally, physically, before they get out onto that field. And that's the same thing that we have to do as speakers. We have to prepare ourselves, just like an athlete, to warm up our bodies, prepare our minds, and be mentally, physically ready when we're up in front of that audience.
So there's somebody that's listening to this and just heard what you said, and they're getting ready to do that in the next day or two, the next couple days. And they're sweating. They're thinking, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm going to do to how I do it. So give a couple tips to somebody, just 2 or 3 simple things like, okay, you can do this. How do you prepare yourself?
Great question. So going back to something I had said earlier is, number one, your audience wants you to be successful. You know the material. This was something I learned as a stage actor, was to learn your lines. Now in stage acting, I'm learning someone else's script. It's not my words, it's someone else's words. But my objective was to learn that information well enough that then I would need to forget it. And what I mean by that is that once you've learned it so well, it now is a part of you. It's ingrained in you. It's inside of you. And all I needed to do was get up on that stage and listen. Listen to the others on the stage. Listen to where we're at in the play. Listen to the audience. All I had to do was listen, and those lines would come to me. So my point is, in this case, you know the material. In this case, it's probably someone who's going to be speaking in front of maybe their business, that they're going to be speaking about something that they know well. And it's ingrained in you. Just relax. I know it's not easy, but just understand that it's there. Pause. Here's something about pausing. Pausing is going to feel 10 times longer to the speaker than it does to the audience. Many people are afraid of the pause. I was afraid of the pause when I first started. Let me also interject here that I was not born with the gift of gab. I somehow ended up in this career field, acting, radio, public speaking. I don't know. I was a shy little pimply kid growing up on Long Island, but I ended up here. When I first started acting, I was so afraid of the pause that if I paused, I'm going to forget everything. But the more I worked at it, the more I found that that pause is so valuable in so many different ways. So, answering your question, you know your material, relax, and enjoy it. If you make a mistake, it's okay. You asked earlier about why are people so afraid of public speaking. I think it's because it's like being in front of people naked. You feel like you're being judged. You're the only one on that stage. All of those eyes are on you. And that could be certainly a part of it. I felt it. I've been there before, but you got to it's like riding a bicycle. You got to practice, practice, practice. So for that person that's getting up there, it's working through that. What I like to do is exercise, do some stretching, deep breathing exercises, understand that you know the material, get up there, understand that being nervous is normal. Your audience wants you to be successful. If you make a mistake, it's okay. Just keep working through it.
Mm-hmm. And, the other thing I found too is take care of yourself before you get there. You're so nervous. You don't drink, you don't eat. I've seen people pass out on stage because they're dehydrated or again, they get in their own mind. So, David, you have done such a great job, building your life and building your business. For our listeners, give a couple tips, just, as if you're from an entrepreneurial point of view, like, hey, this is your story, how you got there. A couple tips on maybe it can help their journey if they want to become a professional speaking coach or, something in their business.
Well, that's a great question. I think that one of the things is that in my case, being a coach, I have a coach. So it's looking for mentors. And when I met Dan for the very first time, you were someone that I wanted to be close to and learn from you and have you as a mentor. And because of the success that you've had in sales, that's an area in my business that I struggle with. I'm great at helping people, but I'm horrible at helping myself. So I think it's getting around others that you highly respect, getting out and networking. And I think that no matter what business you are in, being able to speak proficiently, and I'm not saying this because I'm trying to promote my services in any way, but whether you're working a 9-to-5 job, whether you are speaking at the PTA, or whether you are trying to influence people at a networking event, you have to be able to speak proficiently. And that's something that I continue to work on myself, is to refine what it is I do, how I do it, and who I do it to. So it's being around good mentors, finding a good coach, and continuing to work at it and continuing to learn.
David, final thought. If someone's out there that wants to learn more about you and learn how they can improve their public speaking for themselves, someone in their company or their firm, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Great question. 2 ways. One would be through my website, presentyourwaytosuccess.com. And the second would be through LinkedIn. I'm continuously sharing on LinkedIn different tips and tricks on how to about public speaking, about facilitation, and so on. So definitely through LinkedIn and my website, presentyourwaytosuccess.com.
David, thank you so much for joining us today. We enjoyed you as a guest, and good luck out there. And I'm sure I'll see you at that next event. And now the pressure's on for my next 1 minute.
Thank you, Dan.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Growth Catalyst Show. Remember, you can take these stories of growth and make them part of your own journey. Learn from them, draw inspiration, and let them guide your path of growth. I'm your host, Dan Mahony, and I look forward to our next journey together. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, keep growing.